Good morning.
Welcome back.
Hello. People have returned. This is exciting Delivery Weekly. Skjavek, welcome back. Good to see you.
Thank you.
And Steve, welcome back. Good to see you.
Thanks.
Awesome. And who else we got? So I'm also just going to say I'm going to play like battery roulette right now. I've got 45%, but my laptop is running rather hot, so we'll see how much the Zoom call burns through, but hopefully it's not more than 45%. So welcome everyone. This may be all of us. This is June the 12th. This is our EMEA Americas Delivery Weekly. So for those of you who haven't been with us for a little while, I've just messed up my view so I can no longer see. This could be because my laptop is running just a little hot. We have a section at the top where we're going to try and keep rough out of office stuff, and that's just because it is proving to be a little tricky to keep track of things via the app in Slack. So if you have stuff you know, feel free to drop it in, and hopefully this helps us cross-team. Cool. We don't have any announcements at this stage, but I wanted to just run a little discussion and have a quick voting session on the blocks deployments label. So I have seen a few incidents, and I've seen a few questions and discussions in Slack that made me wonder whether we actually all think of this label in the same way. So quick vote. You can vote under as many of these options as you want, but when you are using the blocks label on an incident, or when you see it on an incident, please add your name about whether you think that label is saying, I'm unable to deploy because of this incident, or whether it's saying this incident is meaning that no deployments are going ahead, or if you actually also mean it to mean something totally different.
I get the feeling this is a trick question.
It's absolutely 100% not a trick question. Cool. Okay, great. So from this, it looks like we are using this label to do two different things. So majority of votes are against this label being the thing that is going to block all future deployments. But we're also using it as a almost a reporting tool, right? Does that sound fair? Like we are using it to also indicate that there is a problem, and I try and include your comment here as well, Jenny, which is the releases or deployments are also like, we want to kind of advertise that things were blocked. Do you want to verbalize, Jenny?
Yeah, I was just busy typing. Yeah, so basically I use it for anything that's like, we need to release a security release today, but it's completely blocked because of this incident, right? Stuff like that. I do tend to use blocks deployments. I know that it does block like production, like the promotion part, at which point I do take that away. But sometimes I do by myself using that label.
Okay.
But
Cool.
yeah,
Okay.
no, I generally take it away after I do notice that it's causing actual auto deploy problems. So I think I don't know if the incidents actually have a wait, now we have the delivery severity label. So I think I tend to use that, but I do remember using that label, like the blocks deployment label, for something that's more like release related. Yeah.
Okay, I think that makes sense. That makes sense. Okay. And for the people who are using it for the for the people that are using it for I'm unable to deploy because of this incident, so like Myra, Jenny, Vladimir, is that the same sort of thing you're intending to show? Like, it's a kind of I want visibility from outside the team that, hey, this thing is disruptive.
Yeah. So for metrics, we do need to know what kind of items were stopping our operation. So whenever we have like a change request that is upgrading the database or is doing something on the web nodes that we cannot deploy, well, I normally add the label like, okay, this change request or this incident, it is blocking the deployments and I'm unable to deploy because of it.
Does the automation that pulls together the deployment blockers report, is it using this label?
Yeah.
What does it, how does it use it? Is this like where it goes, this is the number of things that delayed us?
Yeah, if I recall, I think it is searching for all the release task issues and all the production issues that have the block deployments label, and then it is building the report based on those.
Yeah, and if the label gets removed, it will also search for the ones that have the deploys blocked and the numbers of hours. So I think it pulls both of those labels.
Cool. Okay, great. Good to know. Because the reason I asked about this, and it's certainly interesting to hear the kind of different requirements we have. I suspect, I don't know this for sure, so feel free to disregard this, but I suspect we sometimes make our lives more difficult with deployments because of adding this label. For example, like if you have tests failing on Staging Canary and you add this blocked deployments label, you've given yourself another step in that you'll have to remove that to unblock yourself later, versus the tests are failing, and when the fix lands through on that environment, they will just be passing and your deployment will continue. So I wonder if it might be interesting for us to try and separate out these two intentions. Like the blocks deployments has the automation coded around it to say, if you add this label, everything is going to grind to a halt and not get going again until this is removed. Like it's that kind of like what's the cord you yank in the factories? I don't know, whatever it's called. It's basically the
And on code.
Yeah, that's it. Thank you. Yeah, it's basically like something is wrong, halt everything, and then we can figure it out. But it sounds like we also have a different case, which is like, I am held up. How do I make that visible? And then we maybe even have a third one, which is I want to make sure this ends up inside our deployment blockers automation. Does that sound like there are reasonable, like there are 3 different use cases for this?
Yeah, I think actually it was an interesting label when I joined the team. I thought it was the first one, and then kind of learned that it was more for the second one. Like I thought it was like, oh, this causes deployments to be blocked, and it does, but it's more of like, no, we want to stop deployments. It seems is the intent of that label. So I wonder if, I mean, even just changing it from blocks deployments to like block deployments, like kind of makes a different like intention of the word to me. So
Verb versus adjective, isn't it?
yeah. But yeah, I think those 3 situations that you kind of described make a lot of sense.
That's a really great point. Like, does anyone else, what do other people think about the name? Would block deployment be more clear?
Yeah, but if you're going to have another label that serves the purpose of the second use case that we spoke about, then you could have the label that actually blocks deployments, like the label itself blocks deployments. You could have that be called something like stop deployments, while the label that simply informs others that this issue is blocking deployments could use the word or some form of the word block.
Yeah, I like blocking deployments.
Yeah.
Deployment blocker. Reverse the words.
I feel like that one gets ambiguous super quick. So actually it's interesting on the reporting thing, because we do, for the case you were talking about, Jenny, I think the delivery impact labels would work well for that one, where it's kind of like we have the ability of saying this is high impact to delivery, but that doesn't solve us with this thing held us up and I want to get it into the deployment blockers report. So it does feel like there's probably something there that we should think about.
Right, and
just to, sorry.
Go for it.
I wanted to rectify myself. The deployment blocker report doesn't use this label. It actually uses the release blocker label, and it uses the deploys blocked hours labels. So yeah,
great. Okay. Oh, this makes it so much easier. Thanks, Myra. So Jenny, sorry, go ahead.
I was actually about to say almost the same thing, where I think there's a bit of confusion, because I also look at the deployment blockers table, right? And I see something like, I'll talk about it when we go to that section, but multiple QA failures in the security release. So that's like something completely security release related, and it's tagged with release blocker, right? But it still technically goes into deployment blockers with 0 hours into staging and prod. So I think even within our team's like reporting, it like that wording kind of gets confusing, right? So yeah, like I do try to like differentiate between blocks deployments, release blocker, and like the delivery impact severity levels. But I think, I don't know, it just kind of gets confusing with the wording.
The security release is a weird one, isn't it? Because it's the only one where the thing has to go into production and it's not already been in production and GitLab.com. All the other releases, it's already been there and now we have to package it. Whereas the security release, it's different because it has to still go to .com to be validated, right?
That too, yeah. So that would be if we're waiting for a package to get to production and that auto deploy fails, and that would be a deploy blocker and a release blocker in terms of our labeling, I think.
Probably not a deploy blocker. Like, actually, I think it's relatively rare that any of us would need to use the deploy blocker label, the blocks deployment label, because that is more of I think it's more commonly used by someone outside the team to say, hey, this is an emergency, don't promote this under any conditions. Like, we may use the label, but it's kind of like, if we know about it, we tend to not promote it. So I think it's relatively rare that that will be like a big label of use for us. The reporting is a little bit more hazy, and yeah, it's a great example you give there, Jenny, about the different in different names and different intentions behind them.
I'm curious. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I am curious. Jenny mentioned the delivery impact labels, and so that covers a lot of like what's mentioned in the number one item I'm unable to deploy. And I think like our team and maybe our section knows about those labels, but do other people know? Like, I guess what are those labels used for outside of like our team kind of seeing them and knowing what they mean?
Does anyone use them?
I think it's more for like signaling purposes. More like we don't do any like metrics based off of them, right?
Correct.
Yeah, and also I've personally never seen anything outside of severity 1 get used for that impact label. And if anything's blocking us is severity 1, then maybe that should just turn into a different label. I'm not sure, because I'm not even sure how many severity levels there are for that label, because we just always use 1.
Nice. Okay. Yeah. No, super useful. So it's interesting with the impact labels because they are designed to give us some leverage, basically, is where they came in. I can't remember specifically. Oh, they were introduced when we moved away from always using S2 for our deployment related incidents. And the idea was that there will be times where we need to generate kind of awareness and urgency around things which aren't necessarily officially categorizable as an S1 or an S2. So, they're not customer impacting, but you can't publish a security release, for example. That's really high impact for us. So that's where the delivery label, the impact labels arose from. And I haven't seen them widely used. But the general idea behind them is what we can do if we stick these on is actually then go and shout to people and say like, hey, we have 2 things, no deployments will take place before this has been resolved, or use it in some way to use it to generate some more awareness and urgency on things. But we don't have metrics, and they are kind of just there if you want to have them. I also feel like they're probably in the wrong place because I can never find them in the handbook, but alas, here they are. Yeah, thanks. I was expecting to be on the delivery page. No, they're not. What would be useful? Can we come up with like 2 or 3 small but useful actions that might help us use the labels in the same way and also have the labels we're expecting? Like, what would be some useful things we could improve here?
One other thing to note on that same topic is like I've heard from some other team members that it would be very useful if they had somewhere to check our deployments blocked right now, like a status page kind of. So whether or not we can have a label feed into that somehow, I could see other people finding that useful and preventing some of those messages we see in our channel and in the releases channel.
What about, is there any action we can take so that we don't need to use blocks deployment for reporting purposes, so that we keep blocks deployment as when this label is on, we do not want a deployment to be taking place. And when this label is not on, we do want them to take place wherever possible. So that would mean if you have a pipeline with failing tests, you wouldn't need to use the label because you do want to deploy. It's just you actually can't because your tests are failing. But as soon as your tests are passing, your deployment goes on. Versus this is an incident and potentially we have a problem with the database and let's not make any more changes, in which case we definitely don't want to be accidentally deploying on top of that. Like, is there a practical action we could take to help with that?
I wonder if we can sort of differentiate action and reporting labels very clearly, like say using something like scoped labels. So like action block deployments or report, blocks deployments. It's something better than that. But so like you can just look at it and you know that this label is going to take an action or this label is used for reporting. You don't have to look it up in documentation.
What do people think?
I think in general, the current blocks deployments label, I don't think we should change because other SREs and all like the EMOCs and other people that might be handling incidents are familiar with that label and know what it does, I think. So we should perhaps leave that one as is. But then for the reporting purposes and for the sort of like visibility purposes of this is blocking deployments, it might make sense to update labels there. Like we mentioned, the release blocker label adds things to the report, and it is part of the process to add that anytime you open an issue on the release tracker project. And so I think maybe that label just needs to be changed or split into one or two labels to make more sense, so it's less confusing as to what it's for.
Yeah,
I second that proposal.
It's almost a core problem with labels, isn't it? That labels are descriptive of state or meant to be, and it's kind of hard to describe an action you want to take based on and then describe the state you want the thing to be in after having taken the action. So if you had a label that said deployment stopped, it wouldn't be obvious that, in order to stop deployments, you need to apply this deployment stopped label, but that is the state you want to describe on the MR and end up. So almost maybe a stop deployments label that you apply and then the bot swaps it with a deployment stopped label, but that's all very convoluted, and probably a core problem with using labels to do that kind of stuff.
Steve, so it doesn't have to be like today, because I know you've just returned, but would you mind perhaps just making a proposal and just dropping it into Slack with here's what this could look like, and we could just see if it looks like it might be better or worse, and see if we can head towards it may be that we don't need to massively do loads and maybe we're fine, but it also feels like a reasonable enough confusion that we should probably assume more people in the future joining the team will have the same confusions, or maybe some of the engineering calls also have this confusion. So if we could make it more clear, that probably is a good thing.
Yeah, I can do that.
Cool, thanks, Steve. Great. Skarbek, over to you.
So I know we've already got the delivery or the release management schedule already out all the way through October. I am planning on taking probably the entire month of August and September off for paternity leave. And I know that's probably going to create a lot of stress for the people that live in the Americas time zone. I'm wondering if we want to shift the schedule at all for anyone, just so that I'm, at least participating in release management at all. So I'm looking to see if Myra, you would like for me to do July effectively is what I'm trying to ask here.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I was just checking in which month we are. I'm very, very confused. Do you mean you want to take the next release management shift that's going to start on June 22nd?
Yes.
I'm okay with that.
Okay. I'll put in a merge request to make that change.
Cool. Sounds good. Thanks a lot.
That's all for me.
So, release managers, over to you.
Yeah, that'd be me. Give me 1 second. I'm trying to go over the deployment blockers. There isn't that much from the start of my day to actually fill out that sheet. So let's see. Yeah, let's go take a look at the release on the deployment blockers for a bit. So I was just going through these incidents and trying to fill out a bunch because there were a lot last week. And so as you can see, throughout the week, there's just been a lot of small to moderate sized incidents. I'm finding out more under the additional incidents where deploys block on what's it called? Blocks deployment label was used and then kind of taken off, and then that doesn't get taken into consideration here. Mostly because the blocks like prod block label wasn't used at the time. But yeah, so a bunch of those incidents, and they get reflected pretty well in this graph. I will go throughout after this call and then try to fill those out. But as you can see, there are, spurts of not promoted, spiking up, and kind of trying to catch up with that spike. And then more incidents happening around this time. Yeah, it wasn't too pretty of a week last week. And then, yeah, we got into the auto deploy pause for production. And I believe all of deploys were down for another incident this morning. Yeah, over here. So yeah, I will go fill those out, but yeah, not looking too good for last week. Kind of gets reflected here. We've been having some pretty rough weeks. So yeah, deployment frequency, the highest was 4. At least there wasn't like a dip like the other weeks. There was like 1 on one day, but yeah, so kind of trying to keep it steady, but steadily, things that blocks deployments throughout the week happened. And I think this is the lead time. Nothing too out of the ordinary. And I'm pretty sure, I mean, yeah, we're gonna deploy today, so pretty sure we're gonna see another spike here. I don't really know how to read the lead time changes that well when it doesn't have this much difference. But yeah, that's basically how it looks like. Any questions, comments?
Just a comment. So I think generally on this one, I think the bits below the red line are generally the kind of like, this is really good. So I think you'll probably see on the matching up the graph, like great beginning of the week, and then probably June 8th was that like Wednesday or Thursday? So I think that's usually how I interpret this. So like the week around the May 16th was like overall a healthy week because it mostly stayed below the red line. And then only thing that makes me question that a little bit is that's the median. It's not the target. So it will presumably that red line moves if we have a number of bad weeks. But generally, that's how I read this.
Yeah, that makes sense. So like weeks like these are pretty good.
Yeah, exactly. That was a great
ones.
week. Yeah, that's
Yeah. Yeah. Sounds about right. Yeah, that's pretty much about it.
Great. Thanks for putting all the deployment blockers together as well, Jenny. Appreciate that. Great. Anyone got any other comments, questions? Does anyone want to bring anything else up on this recording? Nope, I will stop.